welcome back to another episode of Quarantined Coaches. Today we are at East Tennessee State University with pitching coach Micah Posey. How are you, man?
Good, man. Good. How you doing?
I'm good. It's nice to have a fellow Tallahassean on here with me.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it. I think we coached against each other in high school, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure we shared a field at least once.
Yeah, I was at Lincoln. You were at NFC. Two really good programs. Okay, so let's jump into where you are now. ETSU. You're the pitching coach. The season got cut short, but you guys had a ridiculous K to base on ball ratio. So how are you teaching command in a world that seems so centered on velocity?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of boils down to like what you put a premium on. You know, some people put a premium on strikeouts. Some people put a premium on, not walking guys. I had a conversation with Drew Thomas at Coastal Carolina recruiting on the road 2 or 3 summers ago. It feels like that. It probably was longer. And they had a year where they weren't walking a lot of guys. And I asked Drew, I'm like, Drew, how do you guys get your guys to not walk guys? And he was like, it's like the Fight Club. We just don't talk about walks. And I'm like, that's interesting because at that time I was talking about, hey, let's not walk guys. I was posting signs in the locker room, no walks. And every time we walk guys at the end of the game, I was like, we walk 5 guys or 6 guys a day. We're never going to win doing that. And so, coming over here, I told my boss man, Coach Panucci, who's awesome, and I was like, Coach, we're going to treat walks like the Fight Club. We're not going to talk about them. And he was like, kind of looked at me. He's like, okay, I can do that. And so we don't really talk about walks. I think we've created an environment where walks, I don't want to say they're okay, but, we've allowed the failure to happen. And we really put a premium on throwing strike one, throwing 2 of the first 3 pitches for a strike, and then getting the hitter out on 3 pitches or less. And when we're in a fall environment, we're only really keeping those 3 stats with strike percentage of each pitch. And at the end of the fall, our guys have that information. They have it at the end of every week. Daniel Sweeney, who is our ops guy who pitched for me last year, I think is going to be a phenomenal pitching coach. He puts those charts together every week. And that's kind of like the nuts and bolts from the walk side. I think that's kind of helped us in the walk department. And then from the strikeout area, we don't really chase strikeouts. But, we kind of educate guys, here's where your swinging or misses are at, and then we kind of attack it from that standpoint. So our guys know where their swing and miss stuff is playing up at, and then it's up to them to execute. We can say, hey, your slider down's a good pitch. You get to 2 strikes. If they're throwing it in front of the plate down and it never looks like a strike out of the hand, then I think they're losing strikeout numbers there. But try to educate guys, hey, it's got to look like a strike out of the hand. Here's where we're going to throw it. And then I think those 2 kind of help. So
that's a lot of mental stuff going into that. Is there anything mechanical that you think helps with it? Or is it just teaching the mental side, let the mechanics take over?
I think I've been a firm believer that the mental and the physical go together. I don't think one can exist without the other. So to sit here and say it's all mechanical or it's all mental, I think they work hand in hand. For us from the mechanical side, I think a lot of times guys rush through their delivery because they're trying to throw hard too early. You'll see young pitchers, especially, trying to ramp up and throw 100 miles an hour at handbrake, which creates some timing issues. We spend a lot of time talking to our guys about their lower half and staying in it and staying patient in their delivery. And one of the cues that kind of helped our guys is, waiting to make the pitch at foot strike and letting things happen after foot strike has really helped from a mechanic standpoint. Also, the thing we do in our bullpen setting is we practice throwing one ball off. I think that's important. A lot of guys, when we go in the bullpens, you're throwing fastballs middle because we want to teach guys how to throw balls over the plate. I think if you can teach guys how to throw one ball off consistently and they get really good at it, I think their confidence kind of develops more and they know that hey, I'm throwing this in a place where it can't get hit. So
you had one guy with, I think, what was it, like a 51 to 1 K to walk ratio or something like that. Was that what it was?
Yeah, Landon Knack, who had kind of turned into a household name this year. He had 51 strikeouts and 1 walk in like 25 innings, something crazy.
How do you do that? That goes beyond just mental and physical coming together. Like what How's that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, for Landon, I don't mind telling you this. I'll let you in on a little secret. Landon has been a premium strike thrower most of his life. When we recruited him at Walter State, he played for Dave Shelton over there. I think, I don't quote me on this, I had to go look at it. I think he had 13 walks in like 100 innings, something crazy like that. So he had always been a strike thrower. He just didn't have what you would call elite stuff, but he always had like a fastball that could get on you. It was sneaky. Is kind of like an unhittable fastball. Um, and at Walter State, I think it's well documented. Like Sean Robinson, Dave Shelton, those guys over there, they had kind of taught him how to be a tougher kid, gave him a better mentality. So when we got him, we had a kid with a really good mentality. He had premium stuff as far as throwing strikes. Strikes was a premium, and then we kind of try to just get a little bit more out of him from the weight room side, from the intent side. And this guy that had 2 labrum surgeries, position player, two-way guy. I think he tore one labrum diving back to first base, tore another one diving for a ball. So here you have a guy that's been 2 years healthy, no issues, and now he's kind of starting to blossom a little bit.
What technology are you using with your guys over there?
We don't have TrackMan or anything like that. I don't think it's like a crazy amount of technology. The 2 biggest areas that we're using, Rapsodo, I think has been a phenomenal tool for us. I think it just educates our guys on spin and how their stuff's working out of their hands, maybe how to pair pitches, how to make pitches better. It just gives our guy an overall, here's how your stuff's working. It's not me standing behind him being like, oh yeah, your breaking ball's popping up out of your hand today. It's like, hey, your approach angle on your breaking ball is positive. It needs to be negative. We can show them those metrics, and there's not a whole lot of debate there like there used to be. The other area we're using is we have some force plates in our weight room that I think we lift with the sports science people at ETSU, and they do a phenomenal job. The Stones and Brad DeWeese and our strength coach Thomas Malinsky, also Wetmore, they do an unbelievable job. And one area we've been able to use those, I think a lot of people use them to see the force output, and I think that's important, but we've used it from a recovery standpoint. We do jump testing, and guys will come in day after a start. We'll do a jump test, see where they're at, come in a couple of days later, do a jump test. And we use it from a recovery standpoint more than anything. And from there, that's how we kind of prescribe throwing programs, things like that.
That's interesting. Do you think, in what area is technology's usage overrated, do you think? I mean,
Yeah.
like there's so many numbers it's spitting out, and there's so many things people are buying. Like, at least in your personal opinion, for you, which part of it is not that valuable in evaluating?
I think the hardest part about technology is a lot of people don't know how to use it and make it functional. I think, you see it all the time. Somebody will have a Rapsodo and they're just like looking at velocities, and you could do that with a radar gun. They're not really educated on how the
That's
vertical
me.
break.
That's totally me. Look at the top left corner, and everything else is just,
Yeah.
it's a foreign
And
language.
so there's a lot that more that goes into that release height, the vertical approach, how the ball's moving horizontally, the spin axis. There's so much going into that one pitch. I think the biggest area, it's just like the dad with the Bushnell radar gun from Walmart that sits behind home plate. I think it's trying to make it functional is where people are struggling. There's people that don't use the technology that do just fine without it, to be honest with you. I think sometimes we don't put enough of a premium on experience. I think experienced eyes are way more valuable than technology, to be honest with you. I sat here and listened. I don't want to call him out, but Dave Thurno, I listened to your interview with Dave Thurno,
Best.
and I think Dave's one of the best pitching coaches in the country. And I think he hit a lot of nails on the head with the way he was talking about the technology. And I think it more so it validates what we see. And I think the kids enjoy the metrics and the validation. And yeah, so that's kind of my spill on that.
Do you think it is easier to teach spinning the ball or velocity?
That's a heavy hitter question right there. I'll start that off with saying neither one of them are easy. Nothing is easy. If it was, we'd all be spinning at a high rate and throwing hard. I'll say velocity takes time, and it's kind of like compound interest. And are you putting money away that's going to reward you later daily? I think that's where kids struggle. They all want that 5-week program that's going to give them that magic bullet. And if they just invest in themselves for 2 to 3, 4 years and looked up in that time, I think they would all like where they're at from a velocity standpoint. From a spin side, the hardest thing to teach from a spin side is a guy that has no feel for like a breaking ball. Teach him how to spin a breaking ball when he doesn't have feel for that, I think is extremely hard. It can come down sometimes a bit impossible. We've had some guys that we've been able to do it with, but it's not easy. I think the easiest thing to teach is maybe altering a spin axis on like a changeup or a fastball. I think, when you talk about what's the easier of those, I think that would probably come across as easier. You can make that adjustment in a short amount of time.
Well, come on, spinning a baseball, isn't that just the way you hold it and what finger you put pressure on?
It's arm speed. There's a lot of things that go into that. We've all seen the guys that, they're 95 and their breaking balls are lazy, and the spin rate on their fastball is 2,400, and then their breaking ball is like, 1,900, and they just don't spin the ball well. It's hard to teach. I think with the new spin trainers and things like that, and the dowel spinners, I think it's becoming, guys are being more educated on how to feel that. And I think the learning curve on that is definitely better than where it was 5-10 years ago. And you're seeing some guys have some success with that, but it's still not easy. I mean, it's very time.
What is it? I truly, again, anybody who watches any of this knows that I don't know jack about pitching. Okay. Get over your front side and throw it, throw it on the corner, kid, low and away. What goes into teaching spin though? Like what else? Like what else? So like I said, okay, grip and pressure on a finger. Like what are all those things that really go into an elite pitcher spinning the ball?
With our guys' inefficiencies, I think a lot of times is they just don't know how they want the ball to spin. I think that's a big piece that a lot of people miss out on. It's like, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? Do you want more horizontal break? Do you want more vertical break? Like, what do you want? Okay, so Landon Knack is a prime example, who was our Friday guy. His fastball was spinning at 120, 130. He had average carry on his fastball, the vertical break. So to make that adjustment, we had to shift his axis inside one to teach that thing to spin more efficiently. So I think you have to start off with what are you trying to get out of the pitch as far as from a movement standpoint, and then we got to shift into the axis. Okay, what spin axis is going to give us the best chance to do that? And then educating the player on, all right, this is the spin axis that's going to help you, maybe with a dowel spinner, or you showing them with the baseball. We have baseballs that have markings on dots and lines, and we're trying to show them this is how it should be spinning. And I think more often than not, guys don't know how they want their stuff to move. I see it all the time. Like, what are you trying to get out of that breaking ball? You want that thing to break down and away? You want it straight down? And guys will go like, I don't know. I just want it to break. So I think starting, what do you want to get out of pitch and working backwards is kind of important.
I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are really going to enjoy that response, but I have no idea what you just said about anything. So
I'm trying to keep it simple.
It's fine. This isn't for me anyway. I don't care. Teaching velocity, is it more mechanics or is it more strength? And don't tell me that it's a nice combination of both. One of them's got to be 51%, one of them's 49%. So where's it?
I think it's strength. I mean, if you wanted me to pick one of those, I think strength is a pretty, now if you're not mechanically efficient, you can have the strength and velocity and get hurt. But if you're just looking at for a velocity component, I think strength is a big component to that, and putting the force on the ground. I think those two things are pretty important. I think what separates our guys from the big league guys is just the physical nature of those guys. So you can't sit here and argue, and there's the Walker Buehlers and guys that are elite movers and twitchy and do things at a high level. But overall, I mean, I think Cressy put out like the average weight of a ball, double A, triple A guy. And we've had guys that are like, hey, mass equals gas, and they go on the beer drinking diet and eat Pizza Hut every night and they get fat. And I think it's more about lean mass. I think people miss the boat on the mass equals gas. And I think there's a lot of people out there are even arguing that now, like, doing studies that mass isn't as important as putting force on the ground and things like that, which I'd agree with. But if I had to put it in one nutshell, I mean, obviously strength and a bit, having strength that transfers onto the game out. I think we've all had guys that are weight room freaks that don't put force on the ground and don't transfer mechanically onto the mound. So
that is one thing that Wake talked a lot about in their pitching lab, is how they're all about figuring out what is forced into the ground, and they can project a lot from there. I learned about that there for pitching. That was
yeah, I mean, I think those guys are on the, they're doing a good job with things, and guys, I think, Randy Sullivan at Baseball Ranch, they got the new force plates, in the mounds. And I think we're just starting to kind of scratch the surface on what that stuff is doing. And I think in the next year or two, you're going to see a lot of cool things with that, cool information. I think, we talk about hinging properly, and the ability to hinge is important. And I think moving forward, you're going to see the numbers and the information backing that up. Guys that hinge well, put force in the ground and things like that. So
what I know you mentioned when we had talked before that you say you guys don't do flat grounds. Is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
So tell me, why don't you do flat grounds? And then what else is there about maybe your routine that might be unique?
I'm gonna get some hate mail on this one probably. So the flat grounds for us, we were throwing them, and I've had years where we were the best flat ground team in the country. Before the game, we had plates out there, we had hitters tracking, guys were throwing flat grounds before every game. I think at one point we were throwing flat grounds 5 days, 6 days a week. Um, and it wasn't translating on the mound for us at that time. The strikes weren't higher, the feel of stuff wasn't better, the breaking balls certainly weren't better. So I had to really step back, get out of my comfort zone, and reevaluate that. Like, is this helping us? And I just came to the conclusion that I didn't think it was. And at the time, we were touching the mound a couple times a week. Now we try to touch the mound 3 days a week, sometimes 4. I know that people are going to scout that, but I think if we could cut back on the flat grounds and jump on the mound more, I think we're going to do better. I mean, you look at, back in the days with Nolan Ryan and those guys, like, they were throwing on the mound a lot. And then the Nolan Ryan was throwing BP. These guys were doing things at a high level. And so, we're trying to get guys on the mound more. I think it was Leo Mazzoni in Atlanta. Their guys threw, I think, 2 bullpens in between starts. And his thing was like, throughout the course of the season, we're throwing one more bullpen than everybody we play. And that's going to help us, with a competitive advantage from field and filling up the strike zone. And so we try to jump on the mound more. For our relievers pre-game, I encourage them to jump on the mound every Friday before the game and throw, 15 pitches. Pick 2 pitches that you think you're going to use tonight and throw 15, 20 pitches max. And then if they don't get in the game on Friday or Saturday, then they're coming back Sunday and they're throwing another pin post game on their own type thing. Per NCAA rules, we're not allowed to do anything with them, but they're getting on the mound post game and they're throwing. And then, in the midweek, if they don't throw the midweek, we're getting them on the mound again on a Wednesday. So they're touching the mound a little bit more than most guys would.
You got to be a big Leo Mazzoni fan. Coming from Tallahassee, you had to be a big Braves fan growing up, right?
Huge Braves fan. Me and my father spent plenty of nights, sitting on the couch watching those Braves teams. And, they were like mythical, magical Disney characters to me as a young kid.
I was at the game when they won Game 6, so
Yeah.
I can claim that.
I'm jealous.
Have you talked to? Do you know Caleb Davis at Furman?
Yes, I know. I can't say I know him real well, but we talk on the road, and I think he does a pretty good job.
Oh, you gotta get connected with him. His mentor is Leo Mazzoni.
Really?
Yeah, you have to watch the episode where he's talking about. So you're gonna love it. You just I could get you connected with him, or somebody else can. He's got Leo's like notebooks from when Leo had all those guys, daily notes. It's like great stuff. He tells stories like Leo, like Maddox would throw some gem, and Leo's notes for the game would be Maddox good. Like, that'd be it. Yeah.
I have to come clean. I have a 2-year-old boy. He turns 2 on Sunday. Actually, his name is Maddox with a U. So,
Who is it? It's gonna drive me crazy. Somebody else has Oh, it's Kermit. Kermit has a kid. I'm pretty sure it's named Maddox. There's a
Yeah,
bunch of guys out there who got names of baseball mixed in there. Uh,
my wife gets mad when people text us and they spell his name with an O. She's like, "Don't they know who Greg Maddox, the goat, how to spell his name?"
what resources do you use outside of technology that you find really helpful? The simple stuff, like you
Yeah,
mentioned
I mean, there's
writing,
been
writing. You hear my kids? You writing. Putting colors on baseballs and things like that. Like, what are some of the simple things you do?
yeah, I mean, I talked about this yesterday with some coaches. We use a funnel every day. We take, two baseballs when we jump in the bullpen. We'll take two baseballs and put them on each side of the plate, and we work that funnel, trying to work glove side, outside ball, arm side, outside ball. I got that from Heater, who I think is one of the best pitching guys out there, was at College of Charleston for a long time, and he's been around, and now he's at UT Martin. I stole that from him, and we've used that. Um, from like a resource standpoint, the two things that have shaped me the most in my thinking: Ron Wolforth, the athletic pitcher back in 2009, something like that. He sent my brain on a different path that definitely got me thinking outside the box and teaching guys to be more athletic and explosive movers. Um, when I was at Elon, I won. I did like a drawing to win a book. I was a volunteer. I was poor. Kyle Bodie put out "Hacking the Kinetic Chain." I won the I won the book. I'm forever thankful for him for that, and that definitely got my gears shifting a little bit, and that was very influential to me. We use a lot of the driveline protocols in our pre and post throws. Um, and then Randy Sullivan down at Florida Baseball Ranch with the Dura Throw Sock, the connection ball, and just some of the things he's doing with the chaos ball and things like that. Those are some things that, I feel like from a resource standpoint outside of the technology, those are some things influential in our teachings that, behind the scenes that influence kind of some of the things we do.
What is there ever a time when you would change a guy's mechanics? I mean, I'm guessing yes, or but is it for injury? Is it for velocity? Is it for spin? Like, when would you say, yeah, I got to change your mechanics?
Yeah, I think you would change them for all those reasons. I'll be honest with you. I'm slow to change mechanics. I really try not to mess with guys' delivery. A lot of guys have timing things. Like when you start messing with a lot of mechanics, I think, there's a lot of things. A lot of things affect a lot of things. The way they use their legs, the way they break their hands, their arm path. There's a lot of things. So when you start tinkering with certain things, you're gonna have to change maybe a few different things. So I try not to change that. I'll say the one thing we do with every guy at our place is we try to teach them how to hinge properly. We teach them how to get into their lower half. I don't mind telling you that we do that week one on campus. And so if you're talking about maybe changing something, maybe that's something we do. I want every guy to have a good lower half. And I don't really budge on that a whole lot. That's kind of a non-negotiable for us. As far as changing arm action, I've got one guy right now that's remapping an arm action, and so we're doing some of that, but I can't say it happens at a high level. I don't really talk about the front side a whole ton. I know I might be missing the boat on that, but I have one guy that doesn't use it. We talked to him about maybe using it, but I'm pretty slow. I'm pretty slow to make mechanical adjustments. I told somebody the other day, if we're making a mechanical adjustment, I'm not jumping on the mound and being like, "Hey, Billy, we're going to change this about your delivery today." I'm going to him in the outfield. "Hey, this is what I'm seeing on video." I'm educating him on that during BP. Like, he's coming to my office the next day. We're looking at the video. We're collaborating together, making sure it's something he's on board with. If he's not on board, I got to maybe present it a little bit better way. Once we've agreed, then there's a med ball, something we're trying to, here's a movement pattern we're trying to do with a med ball or a drill with a baseball or a plow ball, or maybe we're just doing it dry so they can feel the movement. And then that way, when we get on the bullpen mound that day, I think we're in a position for him to kind of, he's already felt it. He knows what it is. And now we can do it with the baseball. And it's not a lot of talking going on my end. I'm watching 4 and 5 pitches at a time, just telling him what I see, trying to get him to feel it. So yeah, that's kind of from a mechanic standpoint.
The mental game. How do you go about, how important is it? How do you go about preparing your guys, or is it something kind of like the K to base on balls thing where you don't really prepare them? You just kind of behind the scenes send subtle messages that prepare them.
Yeah, the mental game for us is huge. We're pretty heavy into it over here. My ops guy, Daniel Swing, like I said, I think he's going to be a great pitching coach at this level, and he's really into it. And he spearheads a lot of that initiative for us, as far as doing the research and the programming and things like that. But the number one thing we do for guys from a mental standpoint is when they come into our program, we spend the first month here teaching them how to breathe and how to breathe efficiently. Ben Ehrlich, who's been a huge influence in my life from the mental game, we had conversations about what the proper breath looks like. And so a lot of guys breathe through their chest. It's a shallow breath. So we try to spend a lot of time teaching guys how to get the breath from their stomach, how to make it slow inhale and a slow outhale. We do a lot of box breathing, and we're doing that in a classroom session. We're doing that pre-throw. I feel like breathing is an acquired skill, and either you're practicing or you're not. And if a young kid is listening to this and they're trying to figure out what the breathing looks like or how it relates to performance, when you get in a game and the anxiety kicks in, your heart rate goes up. So your ability to slow your breath down is your ability to slow your heart rate down. There's all kinds of studies that show anxiety and a heart rate that goes up go together. Ron Artest, Meta World Peace has a documentary that I watched the other day, and he talked about Game 7 of the playoffs. He had been practicing with his mental skills coach all year on breathing, and he wasn't good at it. And he said it took him a long time to get where he was good at that. And he said in Game 7, he was as calm as he's ever been on a basketball court, and he attributed that to the breathing. So we're educating guys on the breath for the first month. After that, I'm not big on holding hands. I'm a big on ownership. I want guys that take ownership of things. So after that, I know some people would scoff at that and they think, or scout that and think we should make it part of our practice plan every day. And it is for guys that buy into it. And it's kind of an ownership piece for us. We also use minimal rehearsal, visualization. We make highlight videos for guys to watch, guys that don't visualize real well or can't mentally rehearse real well. We show them highlight tapes that I think helps positively reinforce how good they are. Mental rehearsal is big for us. And I could go on for this for days, so I apologize if this is a long answer, but
No, that's
um,
go for it.
so from the mental rehearsal standpoint, I read a book with Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham. He talked about he was an Olympic rifle shooter. I think he wanted to shoot a perfect score was his goal. And every day he went out and practiced, he never shot perfect. And he realized that physically it wasn't possible for him to shoot a perfect score. So he took 3 months and he went out through his routine every day. He did everything the same, but he didn't actually physically put a bullet in the chamber. He still pulled the trigger. He did everything the same. But he mentally rehearsed shooting a perfect score for 3 months, and then when he came back, he actually ended up shooting perfect. And I think it's been recorded. He's held some records for the perfect score. And so, what's that look like for a baseball player? We had a young freshman pitcher a couple years ago, through 4 innings, 8 walks, bouncing fastballs, high anxiety. I said, Matt, what bothers you? And he's like, I mean, the crowd, everything just kind of spooks me out. Like, what's your greatest fear? Like, bases loaded, no outs, walking somebody, that's the greatest fear. So Matt Mercer would get on our bullpen mound. I would see him do it. He'd do it on the game mound too after practice. He would jump on and he would mentally rehearse pitching bases loaded, big stadium, over and over and over. And then the second year, he was our best reliever and he was calm as a cucumber. I asked him, like, what changed for you? He's like, I've practiced this mentally and physically, hundreds of times and put myself in these situations. And we brought him in. It was funny. We brought him in against a Power 5 opponent, bases loaded, no outs, and he punched out the side. And it was kind of cool to see transferring that, in 1 year's time. So
That reminds me of the video that they showed this year of Drew Brees in the bubble all by himself one night. and he didn't know that, I forget who it was
Reggie
filming.
Bush.
Yeah, and he didn't know anybody was filming him, and he's over there playing the game, calling audibles, no ball, no nothing, just playing the game by himself. Yeah, well, I think one thing that's different definitely about you that I was hearing that nobody else in the country is for sure doing is taking notes from Ron Artest, Meta World Peace.
That's
So,
awesome.
so there you go. There's one of those what sets ETSU aside. Not a bad one to take notes from. It's just one bad night he had. Are you ever involved with the hitting coaches where you're trying to learn from them as to how are the hitters approaching pitchers, or vice versa, where you're teaching the hitting guys what it is pitchers are doing to them?
Yeah, absolutely. We're having a lot of dialogue with the hitting coaches. Ross Ader does our hitters. Zach Murray helps them with our hitters. Coach Benucci is definitely involved in all facets of the program. Three really good baseball minds. And I tell you what's cool about those guys is they're very giving of information. They are not shy about telling me what they're seeing. Ross stands at first base in the first base box during scrimmages, and he's trying to find patterns of pitchers to the plate. Like, hey, this guy, he's looking down, looking up, and pitching on that same cadence every time. And they just expose us. Like they run all over us. I'm like, hey, what you got? What you got? He's like, yeah, guy, we do the UCLA. He's running on C every time or whatever. And it's like, dang. So he's helping me in that area as far as controlling the running game, and then he's also telling me what he sees from a pitching standpoint. Like Ross, Colby Stewart was a left-handed pitcher for us, really good changeup. I think after his second outing, Ross told me like point blank, like, hey, he's not throwing that changeup enough. Like he needs to throw that thing more. Like, the usage on that, I think is 30%. Like you need to get him to 50% usage on that. And he holds me accountable. Ross, has been really big for me from the hitting standpoint, and Coach Murray as well. And then, so yeah, I mean, I lean on those guys in scrimmages. I stand in the dugout a lot of times. I call pitches just because there's things I think we need to work on. There's a game plan that goes into how we're using our pitches in an inter squad. We get to do it once or twice a week with each pitcher. So we're trying to get the most out of that time. So I'll stand in there with the iPad, the Rapsodo. I'm logging that. I'm calling pitches. And then in between innings, I'm talking to hitters like, hey, what are you seeing there? And it's like, yeah, the breaking ball, it looks like this with a hand. I can see it a long way. We had one kid forcing fastball up. It was a good pitch, but his changeup had like a knuckle spin to it, and it was nasty. Like the Rapsodo, he was killing 800 RPMs off of his fastball. Like the vertical was way lower than it was on his fastball. It was nasty. You get no swings down, like zero. What you got seeing? Like, yeah, it looks weird out of his hand. Like I don't even see it. So we're definitely having those conversations with those guys. I think anybody that is successful in the game, hitter or pitcher, they're talking to the other side a lot.
So during games, you let the catcher call pitches?
My first year here, it was 50-50. I let one guy call. There was two stars I let call their whole game. There's a couple older relievers I let just because I didn't know those guys. I had no history with them. Fast forward to last year and this year, I call every pitch. I'm a pro ball guy. I think there's value in the catcher calling pitches for sure. But with the amount of synergy information that I have in the dugout, I think, there's kind of a stone unturned there. If you have a catcher that's willing to get all the synergy information and have it and maybe make a wristband like the big leagues where they have the information, that could for sure help. But I think the biggest adjustment for us is we go on a 3-day weekend. We're playing a big series in the conference, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You get a day off. Those guys want a day off, and then we play somebody on a Tuesday. You're telling me some of these guys don't have, the time to put into that. Now, the big league guys do it at a high level, and they're getting paid a lot of money to do that. But for us, I felt like there's more value in me calling pitches, and that's kind of the way we do it.
Just say the truth. The hell with that. I'm not going to let some 20-year-old get me fired. I'm calling pitches.
I'll be 100% honest with you. We had a catcher this year that I think calls a pretty good game, and he would have been fine in that scenario. The problem I have is not the catcher. It's some of the pitchers that we have. I have some pitchers that will shake and know what they want to do, and I think, we educate them, and I think it's good. I have some pitchers that are not going to shake, and they're just up there throwing. There's no conviction, and we're fighting that battle a lot. And so, I think that's more or less the issue than the catcher.
What is the biggest jump for a high school kid to the Division I college level?
I think it's just the amount of things they have to do, what's required of them. From a pitching standpoint, it's the volume of throwing, and I think that's not even close debate. Like we could sit here and talk about all the things that go into that. A lot of the high school guys are used to not throwing a lot. A lot of the reasons maybe because they're two-way guy, and so they're playing position, and or maybe the coach has babied them at the high school level. They've pitched and they've given them a couple days off. I think just the amount of throwing that goes into this, I think is a hard adjustment for those guys. The other hard thing is off the field is time management. I think they really struggle with that, especially freshmen. I have class, I have study hall, I have lifting, I have practice. All right, I got 2 hours of myself. I'm going to play video games. Nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with that when you're playing video games and you got a paper doing 2 days that you haven't started on.
So you're out scouting high school arms. What differentiates them, makes them stand out to you? For let's say we're just going with a kid that's like a low or a mid 80s guy, which that velocity doesn't scream, high end mid major. But what is it that you see, some characteristics you might see that makes you feel like that's my kind of guy?
So the one thing that we like at our level, and what we're doing at ETSU, one thing we like is some funk. So if he's got a little funkiness to him, I'm all about the funkiness. I think those guys are overlooked a lot. If you look at our staff, you can pull up Synergy if you have it or whatever. We've got low sidearm guys from left side. I got 6'7" left-hander that's over the top. We got right-hander to the top. We got right-hander from the side. I got right-hander from underneath. We're trying to cover all those arm slots and different looks. And, I think a lot of people go in and they recruit the same guy. I want the upper 80s, low 90s guy with a plus breaking ball and no change. Okay. So you get that guy on campus. Now I've got 7 of those guys and you're bringing them in one after another and they're just not different. And you're not giving that hitter a different look. So we like the funk side of things. I think the low velo guy, if he can provide some funkiness, I think that's well. Also command is a big piece. It's hard to, I'll be honest with you. It's going to be hard to recruit a clean over the top 82 to 83 mile right hander with plus command. It's hard to do that because that's going to get hit over the plate. But for us, we're usually kind of trying to recruit in 3 buckets: velocity, movement, and command. For me, I like the guy to have 2 of the 3. Sometimes we take guys with 1 if we feel like we can develop the second. So if we're talking about a guy with low velocity, if he has big time movement and big time command, I think those guys, mid 80s guys with that, can get outside our level. I mean, you look at the Roth kid from South Carolina. I mean, one of the best college pitchers ever do it. Wasn't an overpowering, velocity guy.
So how should a high school kid be working on getting velocity up? I mean, I think right now a lot of them think, well, let me pick up a 5-pound, rubber ball and run and chuck it against the wall as fast as I can. How do high school guys, should they be getting their velocity up? And is it different than how college guys go about it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of the high school guys don't start early enough on the velocity component. And I know that could be a hot take for some guys.
What do
You
you
want
think, like 6, 7 years old?
yeah, you want your 13-year-olds throwing weighted balls? No, that's not what I'm saying. I think when guys are 15 years old, 16 years old, like I think there's value in long toss. I think there's value in throwing baseballs with intent at 75, 90 feet, 120, whatever. Just throwing the baseball hard. I coached at North Florida Christian. I did the pitchers with my father there, who's the guy's been doing it for 37 years. And so when I was coaching with him at North Florida Christian, we would just put guys on basic throwing programs, and in the off season we didn't let them play travel ball in the fall. And I know that sounds horrible, but we didn't. We put them on a structured throwing program. And I remember for the guys that were in 9th grade and older, they got a t-shirt if they could throw the ball from the third base line over the right field fence. And that was a big thing that a lot of guys wanted, that t-shirt, and they wanted to be able to wear that around. But I look at velocity as like a compound interest. Like when you're in 9th or 10th grade, like, are you investing in long toss? Are you investing in throwing with intent? Every offseason that you don't do that, you kind of lose that 2 to 3 miles an hour. You're not putting that in the bank. So you've lost that opportunity. And a lot of times guys look up when they're juniors or seniors and they're starting to be recruitable. And now I want to start trying to throw hard. Well, and that's not too late, but sometimes you miss a valuable opportunity a couple years before to do that. And for me, I wouldn't touch a weighted ball until a guy's structurally done developing and he's physical. But I think there's value in throwing a baseball with intent and throwing it far. And there's this whole argument going on right now with training command or training velocity. I don't know why you can't train both. Like, okay, I'm going to throw this ball as hard as I can at this spot. Now, if I get my head offline, I'm yanking it and I'm getting outside my delivery, that's not what we're talking about. But you should be able to stay in your delivery and put some elbow grease on it and still be locked into hitting a spot.
We're at the end here, so it's time for me to give credits. Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninja, for putting together these questions because, again, I would never think of anything to pull out this kind of great information from you. Are you a fan of the platform, Pitching Ninja?
I think Rob's done a phenomenal job for those young arms. I mean, what he's doing with the flat ground is really awesome. We've got some guys off that for him. I think the Pitching Ninja, the GIFs, and what he's doing with that is really cool. I think it's made it cool for guys. The whole sword thing. I think it's made pitching and getting swing and misses and making yourself nasty cooler if that's possible. With him, the thing I think I appreciate with about him the most is he's been showing some of these college seniors and some of these draft eligible guys on there. And I think that's a kind of a cool thing he did. I know Landon Knack, our Friday guy, he posted some stuff about him.
Well, isn't that the 51 to 1K to base on ball guy?
Yeah, he punched out 16 guys his last outing here before this thing ended.
Right. Rob showed me it because when I told him I was going to interview you, he was like, "Oh shit, that's where this kid goes." And
yeah, Rob has done an awesome job, and I feel like he's using that platform in a positive manner. And I don't feel like it's a self-promotion thing, and I don't think he's trying to get rich off it. I think he's genuinely doing it for the kids, and I think I'm a big fan for sure, 100%.
Coach Posey, East Tennessee State University, thank you very much for doing this today. Really good interview, man. Really good. Maybe not for me, but I know pitching guys out there are going to love it. So thank you.
All right. I appreciate you having me on.